everybody, Falcon Neighbor. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the Likert layer. Last time we finished up with number 10. We talked about number 11, number 12. I just want to point out one little dynamic that I think is important to offer up if you're reading someone's change grid and they're in one of these general vicinities. What's the difference between 12 and 13? Well, last time around, we talked about 12 was where someone becomes very charismatic and we're starting to romance something, we're turning on all the charm, all that sort of stuff. But as we start to move between 12 and 13, what kind of energy is increasing? What do you think? To physically move from this spot to this spot, I have to go what two directions?
You're moving down
and
out.
Right. And so we have to think about that. For our voice inside of our head to go from giving us this message, romancing the deal, etc., thinking I only have partial or moderate level of ability, something's going on now that's making me feel more capable and more driven. And so I think that we have to understand that this is a stopping point before someone ends up in the danger zone. Like I said last time around, because of the vast majority of the territory of any of these four corner areas is in the danger zone. We pretty much understand what's going on there. But here's a place where something is happening that is moving from schmoozing to actually going somewhere. So how would you guys characterize the kind of voices, the sound, the good grief, the feedback you're hearing from that voice in your head when you're at area 13 that you didn't have at 12?
So would 13 be I got it? Like you're taking ownership of that direction that you're moving in. I think if it's moving more towards that outgrid, they just have to balance that such that that transitory move, they don't become the victim of their own ownership, so to speak.
Sure. Because I think at 12, if I said the person at 12 wants whatever it is that they want, and I think if we look at the levels of tension, you can kind of see that's because 12 right here is in a pretty powerful area of power stress. So they definitely want it. But when you move to 13, you're going beyond the wanting of something. And now, and so right here is where 13 would be. Instead of just wanting it, what are you doing?
You're executing.
You're executing. Good observation. If we jump over to that layer, I'm so glad we're jumping around layers. That's the whole point of this. Okay, this one. We're moving from strong intention and a good chunk of engagement at area 12. But when we get to 13, that engagement is moving to a point of execution being the focus. So I kind of think of this as this is where you decide, okay, up here you want fish, you're fishing and you really want to catch one. Here you're reeling one in. So there's something that I think is far more directive in this spot. Obviously, they've got more confidence because they're closer to what level of tension? As we move down, we're moving from where we were up here. Let's go to those tension layers for just a second. Once you guys get really comfortable with this, we're going from mostly power stress down to power. So so there's a different dynamic going on. And I think what's happening is I'm being more perhaps strategic now. I did move downgrade, which means I'm moving relatively in the direction of greater analysis of what's going on. So a lot's going on here, but this is that person I think is a very calculated, clever, forget charismatic. Now we're moving into the world of like cunning. He's he knows that he's plays any game to win. Where this one out here is doing it by brute force. This one's
or she.
What's that?
Or she.
Oh, yeah. Oh, see, I'm sorry. I was bestowing the positive quality on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm 65. Leave my generation alone already. Haven't we adapted enough? So, oh, anyway, but that's what's happening here. I think it's an interesting part because it's about going after a piece of business just as much as maybe going after whatever else this person is. Well, and that level of of power stress, that far out grid, that much intensity, they're not just wanting something, they're like really coveting it. They're remember the emotion associated with power stress was which one? You guys remember? Y'all should know this. We have 7 emotions: anger, grief, fear, lust, apathy, pride, and shame. 3 of those. Is that a reminder for all of you? The 7 core emotions: anger, grief, fear, lust, apathy, pride, and shame.
Yes.
Yeah. So pretty much everything else is a variation on those or a combination of those or something like that. But nevertheless, up here, what emotions put us up into stress? So anger, where do you think that puts you?
Fear is it's
Yeah,
upward.
exactly. Anger and fear, grief is up there as well. Shame lives up here as well. As we start to move down grid, there's still some element of that kind of lingering, but now we're really wanting something. And so we've used the emotion lust there. Lust contains 2 elements. The first one is a strong desire to have something. But at the same time that you have that strong desire, you're not sure if you can have it, will have it, deserve to have it. There's an element of doubt. And so the wanting always has a question mark behind it. Can I get it? And doesn't that make sense? Because look how they perceive their ability. And look what they're doing with the challenge. They think the challenge is extremely high to be that far, up and out.
Mhm.
Okay, and so I think what's happening is we move from area 12 to area 13 is this person's level of perceived ability has definitely gone up. That's really the only thing that's changed. Their perceived ability has gone up. And as that perceived ability goes up, well, they become that much more confident. Again, they've moved now into power, confidence being one of the big variations on the emotions there. And if you look up here, this is the expressive driver. So there's still some schmooze going on, but this person is very calculated in where they're going, et cetera. And it's all being done with a smile on their face. I can think of several TV series we've watched that would be that individual. So if you've ever watched Suits, which is a law program, or perhaps you've watched, what's another good one that we've watched? Oh, do you guys remember White Collar? White Collar
Mhm.
was another one that is it's another crime one. Anyway, that's that kind of energy there. Charisma is still there, but far more of that driver, confidence. Even remember, if you draw a vertical line for that danger zone, there's a piece of that um, 13 that is in the danger zone. And that's where people can start becoming a little bit big for the room, a little arrogant, a little overconfident, a little pushy. They're on the border of that danger zone. And there's a lot of things that happen there behaviorally that might damage all the good that comes out of here. Again, if we wanted to have a really solid sales representative, that is definitely the kind of person we would hope to have on our team. Just stay on the side of the good. Don't go over in the danger zone.
So is
See,
that greed out there?
Greed is 7.
Oh, okay.
But look,
Okay.
it's starting to happen. Oh, I said 7. That's sorry. It's 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 14. So it's starting to happen in 13, but it's definitely prevalent in 14.
Okay.
Yeah. So
T, what do you call this layer?
I call it the Likert layer because
Likert.
there's really not a name for it. It's just that we're dividing it up into a 5x5 grid. So we're using that kind of Likert scale. Your ability is being low, moderate, moderately high, or high, and likewise up for challenge as well. Trying to create more of a simple experience for someone. So this is kind of like, we want to wet people's whistle. We want to stimulate their curiosity. And so that's what this layer is really all about. So I think of this more as a reference tool than anything else. Yeah. Okay,
Hey,
other
T,
questions? Yeah.
it's also interesting because that's where the threshold of activation is.
Yeah, well, anywhere right
Mm.
around here, we're hoping we got to close the deal. Well, interestingly enough, if the deal, let's say the prospect's threshold is up here in power stress, well, this person who knows how to romance the sale would be more likely energetically to match that person at their threshold than this person would. So maybe it's kind of like, this is how we get a commitment in principle to something. We've got lots of agreement, but for whatever reason, we think now is the time to advance the sale more than to close the deal.
Hmm.
So let me do something to just cultivate the relationship, suggest something to move on. And this person, by the way, the prospect may very often be the one who now initiates taking the action. And they're saying like, well, don't I need to sign a contract or something like that? They've just moved that sales representative into a place of higher perceived ability. Because it feels like I now have the fish. All I have to do is reel this in without screwing anything up. And I'll probably eat well tonight.
Would you
So
say that's close to like how timeshares work, how they already have you on the hook? Like you're already experiencing some of the benefits, like they offer you the free travel to a particular location, then you have to do the 90-minute presentation. So it seems like that's where it's kind of like where that's flowing, where they're giving you something in principle, but then closing the deal later.
Yeah, I will tell you that there is a science behind that kind of sale. And it's something that we can easily follow on the change grid. So how do they bring you in? How do they ultimately, well, in a lot of cases, convince you / break you down? Because the presentation, you have to commit to like what, an hour and a half, and it's going to take longer than that because they're going to pull their manager into the discussion at one point in time. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a whole, I want to say, tension management battle that's going on, and it's a very interesting thing to kind of map out. And then you can go to those sorts of things and find it amusing rather than annoying.
Would you say, T, that it kind of starts out in apathy? Is that where they want people or really power
I think they want to move you up here to power stress, awaken all of your desires.
Okay.
So they paint that picture in their advertising about the beautiful beaches, and Vegas is always going to be pictured, and Disney's always going to be pictured. They know all the things people want to do. So that's definitely appealing to your lust, the wanting of something, but not believing you can have it. And then they're going to come along and explain to you how they understand you and will give you everything you want, but because it's a fractional ownership sort of a thing, you don't have to handle the whole burden, blah 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 blah. And then on and on, we could get deeper and deeper in it. But I think that in their marketing, they're hoping to move you up to here so that they get you to take whatever their invitation is seriously, whether it's come for a tour or for X amount of dollars, you can stay 2-3 nights, whatever it is. They're trying to entice you in it and hoping that experience is going to fortify, if not intensify, that feeling of desire that you have up here. So when they come along as the person who saves the day and shows you the way.
So is that a 13? If you're at a 13 in a sales situation, and you have this focus attention kind of thing.
Look, they're starting at 12.
I
They're starting
gotcha.
at 12 because they're schmoozing. If you go to any of those things, it starts off so personable and so pleasant and so whatever. But as they start to see you respond in ways that indicate you are moving in the direction of at least considering it, if not doing it, then they're going to start reeling you in faster and faster. Yeah, thanks, you shags and sheds. Like everybody. Yeah, I mean, and but nevertheless, obviously that model works because they have perpetuated it for what, decades now? I don't know when the first time she appeared in the market, but I imagine that that's exactly what it is, because none of them believe they believe that environment is only ever a one-call close. They figure if you walk out, they're never going to see you again. And so suddenly a lot of the things they're offering you may be out of stock or whatever it is. So
right. But does it work because people are unaware, or does it work because it's just, you know, just something that they just know to do and don't have anything else?
They do it. And the sad part of the whole thing, interesting conversation we're having about 13, but it's definitely right. And some of them come along, by the way, as a number 14. Some of them do cross the line in that danger zone. It becomes very contentious and on and on. They get increasingly, I want to say, not threatening, but judging. They humiliate people. Anything they can do to either, because here's what's happening in that moment. I don't know what their compensation rate is when they sell one of these packages, but they've just invested 2 hours with you and you've produced nothing for them. If they have a whole day of those appointments, and usually they must have 3 or 4 of those appointments a day, and they don't make any money, well, you're going to get some of that very outgrid behavior start to come your way. So they got to close, they got to meet their quotas, all that sort of stuff is going on. So not a career I would ever take, but obviously it's a method that works, or you wouldn't have so many things out there. And the sad part is that most of these facilities, most of the time, are very impressive. And the deal they're making you is not a bad deal. You just go like, is it true that people wouldn't begin to buy it in sufficient quantities if you treated them like an intelligent buyer and help them make whatever the right decision is for them? That's just not what drives them. They're the used car salesman sort of things. Yeah.
I think that's what I like most about this particular Likert model is often change is associated, has generally been about a process of, about the process or technology, but not people, right? So with this, people have to go deep and look underneath these behaviors of what's going on. If it's going to be effective. So I think this is a great tool that facilitates that.
And I certainly don't think I can make it simpler. I think the story that Area 13 tells is a different story than Area 12 told. And it's important, I think, to help to, match the story of the person who's making whatever the query is. So we have to be able to meet them where they are, and only dividing into a 3-point scale, low, moderate, high. I just don't think that gives us enough points of distinction to deliver a meaningful reading. That said, I already know that my biggest problem is that I can really break things down into tiny, tiny levels, and it becomes too much very quickly. The change grade has 169 addressable locations without adding any of the dimensions that move it into a 3-dimensional space. Just the 2 dimensions, 169 addressable locations, and there's nuances inside of each one of those. So I know that's my problem. So even taking it down to 25 discussion Kodak moments is really tough for me. So anyway, there you go. Okay, any other comments, thoughts about area? I should go back to the one that's numbered, although you guys should be figuring this out by now. So before we leave 13, and again, I don't know there's much to say about 14. That's the danger zone. Do we need to do a deeper dive into this danger zone message?
T, could you put up for a second the slice where it shows awareness and different labels for the bands?
Yep. Okay. It's right. There we go. Yep.
You had another. Yes, correct. That's the one I'm thinking of right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one prior to awareness, where you have hyper awareness and hypo awareness, and then pre-awareness.
Yeah.
We've used, when we work with these CEOs, something I call clarity, confidence, and capability. For them to get progress on what they're doing, they need to have clarity about the problem. They have to have confidence to act upon it, and they have to have the capabilities necessary to make it happen, which aligns really well with what you're showing here with awareness, intention, and engagement.
Yep.
Okay. I'm wondering, when you keep going more in grid and backwards in terms of awareness, what would we call those areas?
That area.
It's the lack of awareness
Yeah, there's a word for it that we kind of came up with. In fact, Diane Bufflin sent it over to us. It's called obtundity, OBTUNDITY. Somebody look that up on Google real quick, if you will. Obtundity, OBTUNDITY. It's kind of the state of being totally unaware of something. So
Yeah.
really what we want to talk about here is there may be an area here on the very far Ingrid side of things that is total obliviousness to anything and everything on there. But at one point, I think we talked about that we believe that the human body detects things in the environment far more quickly than we are consciously aware of them.
Absolutely.
And so it's already processed and simply said, well, X may be happening, but it doesn't really require any conscious participation on the part of the human. So, because really, I do believe our brain and our spirit resents the fact that it's confined into the physical us. So we're its limitations. So it's out there just going to go, oh, fine. We have to pull them in, wake them up. Okay, well, the house is on fire. We got to wake them up with hyper awareness. And oh, well, a year from now, something's going to happen. We still need to get them thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is something that's happening at either a very unconscious, subconscious. I'll never know the difference. Someone tell me, what's the difference between unconscious and subconscious? Subconscious is the mind, unconscious is a physical state. Is that how it works? Something like that. Anyway, that's all over here. This is, but we don't know what we don't know, and it lives right here somewhere.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. And then
I was just going to say, interesting what you're bringing up to, because when we tried to define our ideal client profile, one of the things we defined was the fact that they were uncomfortable with their status quo. And so anybody, if I equate it to your rings here, I would say anybody that is pre-aware or hypo aware, they're uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
They're uncomfortable with their status quo.
In fact, that state of obtundity is a disassociation. Like that's what you're doing. You're disassociating with it. And those become really interesting behavioral kinds of things, because literally hell can be breaking loose within you and around you, and you go into this like protection mode, or at least that's what you're doing, but it becomes an illusion. In many cases.
Well, look at what Shag sent to everyone in the chat window. Obtundity is the state that anesthesiologists strive to induce. That's very interesting. That makes sense.
Because it hides the pain.
The state of having the senses numbed or less sharp. Okay. Subconscious. Okay, that's what we're talking about there. Very good. Unconscious mind consists of the processes in the mind.
I just try to find stuff on the internet that helps
Thank
out.
you. Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing. So that's what's going on here. This is what pre-awareness is all about. And I don't know that we have, how do I put this? Do we have a right to label something that we don't know exists?
So T, what would we label the area prior to pre-aware, in that danger zone that's totally Ingrid?
Oblivious. I don't, because I'm saying that even then, we're here, like maybe your senses are starting to pick some things up. Here, there is nothing happening. And, I believe that, 99.9999999% of what's happening on the planet at this very second falls into this spot for us. There's nothing to be aware of. It's, it's not, in fact, we're not in the situation. It's not in our reality in any way. So I think that's what's happening in here, is that we are losing, what am I saying? Less and less conscious awareness, less and less conscious participation. We're going the other direction, becoming more, I was going to say primal. How do I put this most easily? Let me do something real quick and see if I can pull this off without any major explosions happening. I just need to take this. I need to copy this. Then I need to go back to where we were. Where were we? Not you. Oh, no, we were going the levels of productivity. All right. And then I'm going to do this. Oh, no, I'm going to do this. Oh, except I just undid what I did. Chat amongst yourselves.
I wonder, is there a word for that comes before that pre-aware in terms of like just unaware or something to that extent, because I think that's
Well,
what Boris is describing, right? Because
I
as
just,
you said, to your point, the body picks it up,
Mhm.
but we're not aware of it until something triggers something for us to be aware of it. Then that conditioning will come to the forefront. That's why I like this model, because again, the way we meet any given moment is based on these conditionings of perspective, perception. These are perceiving powers that are connected to attentional faculties. And so something picked it up, and the
Yep.
body's always recording it.
Right. And so that's why I go like, all right, well, how do I put this?
so T, I have a thought here, because I wrote, when you said oblivious for that area,
Mhm.
I added to it unmotivated to act, which is the exact polar opposite of the other extreme where you're at execution.
Yeah. Yep. I would certainly say that, again, here's the only thing I want you guys to kind of keep in mind about this, because now we seem to be describing, I don't know what number that would be, you have to count your way around it, but whatever number that area is, it's mostly the in-grid danger zone. So the in-grid danger zone is a state where someone becomes so profoundly passive, so whatever. We tend to describe them in a way that's always negative, but there's still a whole lot there to learn. What I was trying to do was to find a layer of the change grid. Can I do this one? Will that work? Oh, one moment, please. Excitement is about to happen. Get your popcorn now. Can I group things? Edit, arrange. Oh, see, I should really learn how pieces of software work. We've only had this for, I don't know, decades. Okay, I'll just copy them. Maybe that'll help. Oh, no, I'll just do it right here. So y'all just kind of join me right here. As you get further and further and further in grid, a complete change grid continues to exist. So soak in that for just a second. If I go back to any balanced perceptions, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, I can see right there the lines are. There's a smaller change grid. So even inside of the danger zone, there is still differences that range from apathy all the way up to stress. So just kind of be there for a moment and go like, you mean to tell me that with such minimal movement, forget physical, emotional, intellectual, just a brief change of a word or a thought, I can go from apathy up to stress. Can you imagine being there?
You know what you're describing, T, for me, is somebody that is terminally ill.
Something is definitely afoot. And I think it's kind of like this person is maybe totally entrenched in their life, but they are not participating in life.
In life, exactly.
Life is all out here. This person is saying like, I can't do much of anything. So I can't handle anything other than nothing in terms of a challenge. And so I'm existing, but I'm not living, make it a little bit big, move them out to 2 and 2. This is still a very different kind of life. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are in it who aren't glad to be in that state. So I don't want to make it judgmental. I just want to say we don't encounter a whole bunch of this in our business lives. Hopefully you don't encounter much of this in your personal life, but maybe there's a family member out there who, for whatever reasons, is so concealed inside of themselves, so pulled inward that even for them, but they're happy as happy can be. So it's possible for someone from our outside judgment to have such a small world. But if inside of that small world, we can recognize there is still completeness, then we can recognize that their joy is just as meaningful as any joy we might ever experience. And their pain is just as severe as any pain we might experience. You guys with me? Did I just get too philosophical?
No, I agree.
So these people,
I mean, can they really be happy, T, being in that place? It
in
seems
their
to be
own
like,
mind, in their own mind.
Yeah, in
I
their
believe
own
they can
mind,
be
yeah.
blissful.
Yeah.
They can be blissful, but they're going to have moments that they're, like all of us do, that life as we define it, gets disrupted. Stuff happens. We go like, oh, didn't see that coming. So, then we have to respond and realize that our world is more complex than we thought it was, or, our world can contain experiences that are far more challenging than we thought we'd encounter.
Right.
So it's all part of it. We always want to remind you guys that everything about the change grid, all the layers can be applied at a very microscopic level. We don't have to say that, because how I put this, each one of us has our own definition of a 10-10 experience, or a 6-6 experience, or a 3-3 experience. It's very personal and relative, but in its relativity, it is consistent. So we just have to be willing to shrink it down or blow it up so that it matches, what I want to say, the personality of the individual, the ego of the individual, the whatever, the range of that individual.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I always say life will meet you exactly where you are, not necessarily where you want to be.
Right.
So in other words, it meets you where you are first. So to me, like what Boris was describing, when I see people in a state of resistance, the revelation and resistance correlate together. So in other words, the change in that moment can happen, but when people try to resist the resistance, then they get into these illusory states of trying to protect the narrative that's keeping them where they are. And so they just keep recycling the same pain.
Right.
I hear this all the time. People say, I don't have time for this.
Right,
I don't have time for reflection.
look.
I don't have time to this. You have time for pain? Are you serious?
Yeah. No. Yep. Well, here's the thing, Brian. We all live in our own subset of the change grid. And, our change grid is in constant motion, perhaps. It shifts a little bit on the grand change grid of life, So our idea of an out-grid experience might be different in one context than it would be in another context. We're dynamic individuals, but inside of each of us, we are a whole and complete person. We have everything available to us. It's our intensity, there's lots of things that are relative. So yeah. Anyway, there you are. Okay, see, I can't tell brand new students that. They can't have this conversation. So.
No, but I think they would get some value out of it, because I think, Kathy said it spot on before, that we're losing, and I think that's why so many people are moving this in-grid direction. We're moving in a direction where we're losing the capacity to reflect. And we don't spend enough time doing that. And so again, if self-permission, decision-making, all these things are outsourced to algorithms and technology, and that's where change tends to be. Oh, we're going to change processes. We're going to change this. We tend to not look at the human side of enterprise, so to speak, right?
We have a tendency, you have no idea. For years, I tried to frame my services as change management services. And I'm telling you, every place I went to considered change management to be something that was entirely about policies and procedures and technology and whatever, that kind of stuff. And it said, like, well, what about the people side of change?
Right.
Because I don't care how great your little plan is that you came out of your strategic planning session with, people can either rally behind it and fulfill it and take it to whole new levels, or they can undermine it and make all of your planning time a total waste.
Exactly.
Well, people are going to make it or break it.
And that's why we have all this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think, T, because they focus on what's controllable in their mind, right? In their business. And so policies, procedures are easy to control. People you can't control.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So that's what, so I would start saying, like, no, we talk only about the people side of change. You tell me what change you want them to make. And I can, using a tool, show you exactly how ready they are to do it, how engaged they are in doing it, how likely they are to follow through and get it done, and what type and level of support they're going to require. So if you find that your struggles to change are all about your people, maybe, just maybe it's time to fill out a change grid, see what's really going on, and then better manage people's levels of tension. Life is tension management. Life is tension management.
Well, the
Okay.
word that comes to mind to you is influence, right? You're looking to influence the change.
Well, and this is it. So now influence is an interesting thing because if I said, well, 13 is influential, but let me just go to a different layer for half of a jiffy where we talk about, nope, that's not you. So many layers, so much information.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, the influencer energy is starting to diminish somewhat and becoming more forceful. More of the leader energy is coming into play. Now, in all fairness, so that you guys can see this as an eyeful and go like, what the heck, man? Where are my 16 types? Here they are. Nope, not you. There you go. So keep in mind that if you're that expressive driver energy, you got to see where I'm dividing things up. I know it's all orange. How unfortunate. Anyway, there's a lot of expressive energy between area 12 and area 13. Similarly, between 13 and 14, there's a lot more driver energy coming into play, and the expressive energy is starting to go down. So don't forget what's happening energetically as we start to look at these different sorts of areas. So what am I saying? If you want to be influential, I don't know that I need to be as driven as area 14 is really being. So, because that's why I said, like, one part is about schmoozing the deal. That was area 12. And one part is going in for the close. And that's a little bit more driven energy, more confidence, more perceived ability, reading the indicators in such a way that you believe you have a strong likelihood of prevailing.
So when we transition, you can transition from being an influencer to leader. You can carry some of that with you, but it has to be like balanced, right? Like you can have a little bit of both of those characteristics, but you're going to have one of that's primary and one that's more
yeah, you got to lead with something. What are you going to lead with? I mean, leading with balance is a rather challenging thing to do. Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to find the round layer. There it is. Okay, so see what's happening is this influencer leader stuff. So when I'm closer in, I can be somewhat influential, but leader could be happening a bit earlier as well. So those energies are present, but I think that, again, we said the best spot is probably right here, right? We want to be in the middle of all of these sorts of things. So if we're talking about business, you know, accomplishments, those sorts of things, sales. Yeah, all right, anyway, I could talk indefinitely about it. So do we need to talk much about area 10, 11, 12, 13, 14? That sits almost entirely energetically in the danger zone. Do we need to talk about that?
I don't feel we do, but
No.
there might not be. Yeah, I don't know how many of us have been on the call.
Answer it. Otherwise, let's start scooting down grid a little bit. Area 15. Area 15, since we're still on this little layer, area 15 would be mostly a downgrid leadership area. It's starting to get a little bit of a hint of the advocator. Remember, well, to understand the advocator, we need to get down to the thinker. The thinker figured something out. They've been considering it, weighing it all out, doing all the kind of, I want to say, slow-paced, but steady, perhaps, thoughts and consideration. So these are quiet problem solvers, not this far down grid, that's a danger zone, but up here, that thought process is really working very well. Well, part of your thought process may lead you to make suggestions or become a bit of an ambassador for a particular change to occur. That's when you're moving into the advocator energy. The advocator energy does not obligate you to do what needs to be done. You're just talking about it's the value in somebody doing it. Remember, if we look at the levels of tension, the advocator is in large part power apathy. So they're not really wanting to do all the nitty gritties, but they'll be happy to tell you. And if they step a further upgrade now, they're very much in that leader sort of slice. I'll also draw to your attention that these 4 chunks, if you bring down to their little slice of the pie, graphically, they're not even. The leader energy, energizer energy, follower, and thinker are much larger pie slices than influence, helper, administrator, advocator. And I did that on purpose because I wanted people to go like, there are countless blends that are going to occur as we move between any of these energies. So we don't have 8 energies. We probably have 8 gazillion different energies, but at least they fall into these, you know, Kodak moments where we can stop and just appreciate what we're looking at that point in time. But when you're reading a change grid, subtleties and nuances are what it's all about. So here I am at area 15. I know there's a lot of leader energy going on. If I look at the levels of productive tension, I know that there's in the southern part of power. I know if I look at the energies, energetically, that's a lot of analytical driver, but still a
Okay.
little bit of driven driver going on, right?
That's what I was going to ask, because it seemed like in 14, you'll be quite forceful, but you're letting some of that energy go
Well,
as you move down
I'll
to
change it this
15.
way. I would say that the person who is an analytical driver in this energy is trying to prove a point rather than make a point. So
Okay.
the driven driver is hammering you with whatever point they're trying to make. Well, the analytical driver, obviously they're a driver, they want to move things forward, but they're going like, here's evidence. This is the proof you're looking for. This is what you need.
Well, the classic analytical driver is a prosecutor, a
Yeah.
lawyer. Yeah.
Absolutely. You'd better have done your homework and have your references ready to cite. So that's what it's all about, an analytical driver. So
So that would be like where Boris talked about the clarity and confidence aspect that would be
absolutely.
present there.
Yep,
Yes.
absolutely. This, by the way,
Okay.
again, let our little 25 layer disappear for just a second, just look at the 4 energies. Remember that we said that the hallmark of a good CEO is that expressive driver energy is at their essence.
Mhm.
A CFO needs to be an analytical driver energy. A COO needs to be an amiable driver energy, and the chairman of the board is probably going to be a driven driver because they genuinely are focused more on how the stock is performing financially for their benefit than whatever the company may happen to be. So, you know, no one who makes an investment always has a heart connection with everything they're invested in. So sometimes it makes sense to do it and sometimes it doesn't. So it's a little bit more, I want to say detachment here, although in reality, driven driver has a different value system than an amiable driver might have, or an analytical or expressive driver, or anybody else for that matter. Okay, makes sense? So if we look
Yes.
at the engagement layers well, we know that the person at 14, that danger zone, was executing it and killing things along the way. Well, now that's calming down a little bit, but look, there's still a big chunk there about building that case and fighting that case. So maybe this, to Kathy's point, is attorneys that are truly arguing their cases. So, you know, it's trial time, put up or shut up, where under other circumstances, they might have been more of this, whatever number that one would be. 1, 2, that's area 3. So yeah, so you guys starting to feel a little bit more about the subtleties and nuances
Yes.
energetically, what's going on? Yeah, I hope so. That's you know, part of the whole point of this. Okay, so get the idea. They're engaged, they're executing, but they're really, because they're leading relatively down grid, we know they've got a stronger dose of analytical energy in the secondary spot. So they're about proving something. Okay, questions, comments? If we look at the levels of tension for just a second, oops. Nope, that's solidly in southern power, so things are starting to calm down. Remember, an upgrid plotting represents a puzzle in search of a solution. Something up here has to be figured out. And the Southern Hemisphere represents things that have been figured out, puzzles that have been solved. So this person has a lot more confidence in the reality, the truth, etc. Where this person, again, I'm slightly upgrade now, has far more energy going towards convincing others that something is happening. You know, they got that edge between influential and driven. So they want to keep people solidly energized, even though evidence may not be ready. Where this person is saying, well, you can keep them energized if you want, but the truth is that we can make a strong logical case. Why don't we let people set aside all the enthusiasm they have or passion they have for what we're talking about, and instead know what they're talking about? Well, I just totally screwed up this diagram. So, all right, anyway, thoughts about that? Comments, questions, point made? Oy. Are you it? No, oh, I'll fix it later. All right. Oh, actually, I could probably do this. Behold the magic of undo. Okay. So that was area 15. Anything else you might want to say about 15? Shall we go to the adjective map? We haven't done that for a while. Let's go to the adjective map and see what's happening generally in area 15. Let me zoom in. So kind of mostly right around these. Commanding, enterprising, multitasking, determined, some tenacious, but some good administrative, cogent, fact-oriented, clear, serious. If they start to be icky, then cold, harsh, severe, stingy, but a little bit argumentative, demeaning, dismissive, stubborn. So imagine someone who knows the truth. Could they end up being argumentative, stubborn, if you touch their buttons in the wrong order, demeaning, dismissive, cold, harsh, etc. But so when they're on a good day, we got these things sort of happening. On a bad day, they got to watch out for some of this stuff that might be going on.
That part there, the argumentative and stubborn, that must get worse, or I could say more pronounced as you're moving further down grid, does it not? Because your knowledge is growing, your
Right, your knowledge is growing,
ability
but your perceived challenge is going down. So what ends up
down.
happening is that you start to lose the fight. You move slowly but surely further and further down grid. In fact, look at these two words that are revealed down here: blaming and pragmatic. At a certain point, you just kind of go, these people are so stupid, you know, I'll tell them so later on. You become frustrated and hostile about it because you're resentful and sarcastic, and then you get very critical and rigid, and suspicious starts coming into play. I mean, see what's happening. And it's all because boy, I'm screwing that diagram up in a big way.
My favorite place to be.
Yeah. But I mean, look what's really going on. You're losing the fight, starting to become more, how about I say, quietly judgmental, or you'll criticize them under your breath. You'll talk to other people about what stupid things they happen to be doing, or why they're so dumb they can't understand what you're trying to say. And then you get very frustrated. Remember, the hallmark feeling when you have a perceived ability of 12, but a perceived challenge of only 6, is you do start feeling frustrated that you are being held back by people and situations. So this is a really, resentful about that, sarcastic about that. So how many of you have ever known or felt yourself that people are, you understand something far better than other people do, and because they don't see it as clearly as you have, and someone was foolish enough to give them positional power, they're interfering with you moving forward on something you wanted to move forward on. Can anybody relate to that?
Yes.
Got a client like that? All right, so, okay.
I think it happens all the time in business and organizations.
That's right. So, and I think a lot of times it's like employees certainly know far more, I believe, than leadership team would ever imagine. Employees really know. And that means that employees are assessing and judging anyone above them rather casually all the time. And so you start to realize that the leadership is doing things that makes no sense whatsoever, that they haven't been listening to. You're going to start hearing these kinds of things happening in that grapevine sort of conversation that happens.
Mhm.
Who knows what the text threads are going to end up looking like. So yeah, unsociable, loner, gets to be in the danger zone at a certain point. Okay.
I met a Navy officer that was telling me about his experience when he graduated from the Naval Academy, because the next to the captain, he said the most important or powerful person on the ship is often the petty chief officer. So
Mhm.
they've been there longer than, you know, this newly minted officer. And
Yeah.
so they have the trust of the sailors. And
And they
so he
know how
comes
the
in with
thing works. I mean, they know.
exactly. So when he came in and thought that, hey, I have this power, they sabotaged his career because no one would listen to him and things. So that was a learning lesson for him, he said.
That's right. And so this is where he ends up, and he has a choice, because again, if you look energetically at what's going on, we now looked at the different roles. That's this one. As we move from being, okay, wait, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, 17, and we're looking, as we move from 15, where had a lot of leader energy going on, we're now slipping down into advocator. We still have an opinion, and we still may not hesitate to share that opinion. In fact, we might initiate the sharing of our opinion. But as a certain time, again, this is where that frustration and resentment area falls on the change grid, coordinates 12 and 6. So there you are, rather intensely, if I looked at the intensity scale, rather intensely advocating for something. But at a certain point in time, your level of productive tension is going to slip from power apathy, or sorry, from power down to power apathy, and ultimately start to get a little bit of apathy. They're not there yet, but they're getting close to it. Well, you start to give up and just say, fine, whatever. So they pay my salary, whatever happens, someday they'll see the light and I can say, I told you so. So, this is definitely something that's happening, but they move from advocator to thinking about it, and they'll still think about it and plot your, untimely demise. So hopefully they won't execute their plan. Luckily, they're a long way from execution, but push them hard, challenge them in a big way, and the quiet can suddenly become the ballistic. Remember, these two danger zones are neighbors. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just check in. We have 6 minutes left. We got time to do another one. I'm just kind of curious. Are you guys really starting to feel energetically the differences on the change grid? And then the real point of this series was, can you become a voice in your head that is speaking to you from that spot? So I believe that ultimately what we're thinking and feeling, well, certainly what we're thinking is primarily verbal in nature, certainly has a strong verbal kind of quality to it. So words are being used, messages are being shared. But I also believe that emotionally or biochemically, messages are being shared or supported, reinforced, expanded upon, managed in some sort of way. So there is something neurochemical that's going on with those thoughts. Did the thoughts change the neurochemistry? Did the neurochemistry in turn change the thoughts? I don't believe they work sequentially. I believe they kind of work in a sometimes cooperative way and sometimes antagonistic way. Brian, am I right? Is that?
Yes, exactly.
So, I've got all that going on. Got all that going on.
So how do we factor in the size and importance into this kind of analysis?
Well, I think that as I said last time around, we tend to take care of the importance axis, which is certainly the more important of the remaining two, by lovingly prejudicing their selection of activities to look at, because we could say to them, you can put anything on the change grid, but we don't say that. We say you could do that, but we do say that so many of them are not worth looking at. They're mission incidental, they're trivial, they're just other things. We want to focus on the mission critical activities. So what are your biggest goals? What are your greatest aspirations? We're prejudicing them towards talking about more important things. And so we don't seem all that manipulative. I'll say the inside of their own environment, their own body, their own mind, they've already been doing the same thing. Even their own thoughts have been saying to them, these things are worth paying attention to, and these things, why are you wasting, you know, your activity, your neuronal activity on something like this? So I think that we're being steered always by some force to focus more on important things than unimportant things. I think we can all kind of agree on that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
And T, I think that that's the value in Brian's question, because when you're looking at a list of activities, if you don't focus or start with what is most important, and again, I go back to when I had a role of writing job descriptions and evaluating jobs within organizations. And that was always a primary question, which followed up with, well, if this does not happen, what's the impact
Right.
of this position? And so when we're looking at an activity list, for me, it's always critical to begin with that question of importance among those activities versus taking them in sequential order.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And, you know, that's why when we're doing group profiles in particular, we do want to run the statistical analysis to see how they ranked the activities by importance. You see, the reason why those additional dimensions were added, they weren't the original dimensions. The original dimensions were these two. And again, you'll find several two-dimensional models that do give rise to 5 levels of they give rise to 3 levels of overall activity, productivity, whatever. So, you know, I get it. But I said, wait, this isn't telling the whole story, because what perceived ability and perceived challenge fails to tell me, and I want you guys to all weigh in on this, what just looking at perceived ability and perceived challenge, I am being told nothing about how someone values something else. I'm learning nothing about their value system. All they're acknowledging is that they have the ability to meet a challenge. Well, we all have abilities to meet challenges that are outside of what our value system would say merits that level of attention. So when I think of importance and how we go about bestowing importance upon something, I think what we are really doing is, as Tim used the word, evaluating. So evaluating is the process of determining value, removing value from something, or what I would say is dissecting, identifying, quantifying, making real whatever this value may be in something. So I think we have to we have to ask the importance question if we care about values.
Yeah. Plus, there tends to be a gap between the subjective perception of what could create value and the objective reality of what would create value, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. So we have to do that. And size, of course, was a response to something I had heard over and over again. And I'm sure you've all heard the same thing come out of your own mouth, let alone everybody you've worked with or whatever, where they say to you something to the fact of, yes, I could do it. Yes, it's important, but my calendar is full. I have no space. I have no bandwidth. I have no energy left. I have no resources left. It's too much. So that hearing those messages, I said, you see, that's got nothing to do with perceived importance or perceived ability or challenge. This is a person who has a lot of things coming at them from a lot of directions, and they have to prioritize something. And maybe importance is part of the prioritization process, but I think the element that needed to be looked at was about capacity. Do people have room for something to be done? I thought that's what it boiled down to. And the size dimension helps us understand, relatively speaking, how a person views.
I think that's a really important point, T, for business. I mean, capacity makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
I think for most people. And it also helps me because I always had trouble with the size concept. I got it. I mean, it made literal sense to me. But if I can think of it in terms of capacity, I think it's a lot easier for me to use it then.
Excellent. And you think about any kind of company. I want to understand this from a positive light as well. A company has to really understand capacity issues. As they put more things on people, what they are trying to figure out is how to get more value out of each full-time employee they have or employee they happen to have. At a certain point in time, the load is going to become too heavy or too whatever for a person to manage. And now a new hire or an additional hire is justified. And so I get it. It's a part of normal business to always want to be piling things onto people, but sooner or later you reach a capacity limitation that becomes a problem. Yeah. So got to look at it. All right. I think we're making good progress. We have 2 sides left to finish, and then we will have made our journey through the 25. So hopefully you guys are learning something from this and appreciating the change grid, what the change grid has to share a little bit more.
Absolutely. I love it.
All right. So we'll pick up where we left off come next talk. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Everybody. Bye.